they invented a plan that was called the South Texas Border Initiative. Great plan. They decided that it would include new facilities, new academic programs, the hiring of faculty, and the enhancement of much-needed equipment and libraries. So it was in the midst of all of this that we decided it's time to build a new university. Because Brownsville, UT Brownsville, wasn't established yet. And if there was ever going to be a moment when that spigot started to get turned on, we needed to be in the game. So we had a chairwoman of our board at the time that Rick knows, and many of you may know in the audience. Her name is Mary Rose Cardenas. Now, Mary Rose Cardenas is a strong woman, about 5'1". She and her husband started with selling cars on the corner of their filling station and ended up owning 15 different franchises and became one of the largest Hispanic-owned businesses in the country. Now, Mary had 5 children, but all of her children went to college, but Mary herself never got the opportunity to go to college. But she was on our board, and she was this toughest lady that you will ever meet, who could love you to death, hug you to death, and then grab you by the tie. I was with her at the legislature one year when she got upset with a representative, and he was too tall. So she just grabbed him by the tie, pulled him down to her height, and he was rude to me and said something, and she said, "Don't you ever be rude to our president again." And then let go of his tie, and he popped back up. And she got roses the next day from him, you know. So here is Mary Rose Cardenas, and so she calls Chancellor Hans Mark, who was the chancellor of the University of Texas System. Now, some of you may know Hans. He's wonderful. He's a professor of engineering and physics at UT Austin still today, and he was the former deputy director of NASA. Brilliant physicist, and he's about 6'4". So we arranged a meeting of the Titans, and Mary was to make the pitch to ask the chancellor to start UT Brownsville. And she had all the data, and she didn't need it anyway. She was just going to let it rip. And we were going to try to see what would happen. Would he agree to do this? So Mary did her presentation, always sitting right on the edge of her chair. Hans, like some men do, kind of took over the couch. You know how sometimes you see men, they don't sit like we do. We kind of sit on the side. He kind of leaned over and thought, I'm going to listen to this little lady, see what she has to say. So at the end of her very impassioned speech to him, she said, well, we want to know if UT is going to take us up on this. This is an opportunity for you to come into our community. We're giving you this wonderful community college. I mean, it's da-da-da-da. And Hans said, well, Mrs. Cardenas, we think that maybe in 10, 15 years, we'll be able to consider such a proposal. Mary never paused. She said, thank you very much, Dr. Mark. Now that we know UT's not interested, I'm going to call the chancellor of Texas A&M and see if he's interested in the deal. We froze. I mean, we figured this is going to be a bad thing. Chancellor Mark turned back around, looked at her, and he just smiled. He was so taken by her directness and right in his face. And he said, Mrs. Cardenas, you're absolutely right. We need to get this thing moving now, not in 15 years. Complete. She looked at me. I was the president of community college at the time, looked at Homer Pena, president of the branch of the university, and she said, y'all get to work. Go do something. And Hans did the same thing, and that meeting turned the tide. It would forever set the stage for transforming our region. One woman's candid act of courage and determination, one chancellor's willingness to acknowledge the need. Less than 1 year later, we had successfully convinced the Board of Regents to seek legislative authority to establish this new university. Then each of them had helped us convince the legislature and the governor. In less than a year, Ann Richards came to our campus to sign the bill establishing University of Texas at Brownsville and a unique partnership with a community college.